Hi, Lou. Can you hear me? Okay, good.
Hey, Maureen. Can you hear me well enough on this? I can't hear you that good.
Hey, Drew.
Oh, I can hear you.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I'm not stumbling because they changed one of my computers, but I don't know.
Drew, did you get that other monitor?
See. I did. Let me see.
Try it. No, I can't hear you.
It has something to do with the microphone on my camera, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi, Lauren.
Hi. We're just going to wait a few minutes. It appears I don't see any. I see Doug now joining us. Let's wait a few moments for some board members to join the call.
And just as a reminder, we are recording this session.
Thanks for your patience, everyone. We're waiting for a quorum of the board. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We're just waiting for one more board member to join so that we have a quorum. All right, it appears we are with a quorum now. I want to welcome everyone to this work session of the Board of Education on Tuesday, October 20th. This meeting will be recorded. Before we begin, please note that Board Trustee Jeremy Arnon and Board Vice President Silvio Robles are unable to join us this evening. As this is a Board of Education work session, we will be not reviewing any business items or having a period of public comment. Before describing the outline of the meeting, as a reminder to the public and employees, the Board of Education is an elected board of directors for the district. The board is a governing body responsible for establishing the goals, setting policy, and overseeing resources for the district. And the superintendent is the district's chief executive officer and administers the day-to-day operations of our schools. The Board of Education is not voted, nor are we voting on the operations of our schools. The reopening plan submitted by the superintendent to the state on July 31st was reviewed by the board, but it was created by the superintendent with the collaboration of the Reentry Planning Committee. At board meetings, at the work session on September 11th, and in this work session today, the board is listening to the superintendent's recommendations for reopening and can provide guidance as a governing body. Sometimes the board asks to hear specific information so that we can decide if the superintendent's recommendations are within our goals and within the capacities of our human and financial resources. The superintendent, assistant superintendent, and the administrators have the decision rights in this work session. The board will weigh in and be consulted in this work session, and the union leaders will also be providing input. Today, we are in a work session to do two things: listen and to work through two main questions. First, we will actively listen to the building leaders from Hastings High School, Farragut Middle School, and Hillside Elementary, to special education leadership, to Melissa Szymanski regarding ELL students and the Flex Wednesday framework, to our Director of Counseling, to our Director of PE, Health, and Athletics, to Facilities and Transportation, and to union leaders. They each will be summarizing the experiences of our low-density hybrid operating model, both its successes and its challenges, and will suggest improvements to the hybrid model. And they each will speak on the requirements for and challenges of phasing in more of the student population from their various perspectives. Then, after hearing that feedback, we will work through two main questions together, which are: what improvements to the low-density hybrid model can be made? And what operational model will the district use for November? And for what length of time will that be recommended? As there are many presenters this evening with much information to share, I am asking all board members to hold their questions until after Dr. Henning-Piedmonte has summarized at the end of the presentations. Now I'll pass this over to Superintendent Dr. Henning-Piedmonte to introduce each of the building leaders, administrators, and union leaders so that they can share their presentations.
Thank you so much, Ms. Berman, and to the Board of Education trustees. And thank you for giving your time to this endeavor this evening to be able to share some important information with you with regards to the existing successes and challenges associated with our current model or hybrid model. So tonight's forum and format, as Ms. Berman described, is similar to our September 11th Board of Education work session, which was arranged to hear feedback about what our next steps will be regarding the instructional model that we have been following, proposed changes, and the feedback from faculty and staff. I want to thank the dedicated professionals of the district, which includes members of each of the bargaining units of the Hastings Administrators Association, the Hastings Teachers Association, the Civil Service Employees Association for clerical members, and the Civil Service Employee Association for custodial members, buildings and grounds, and cleaners. These professionals have worked tirelessly in their roles to open our schools, to welcome children back, to create a culture where students are interested and engaged, and create a sense of community and belonging, regardless of whether they are learning in person or learning from home. Like September 11th, you will hear from the administrators, followed by the bargaining unit leaders. The administrators were asked to organize their feedback tonight around certain essential questions, if you will. And they're going to have summary points that they'd like to leave you with regards to the following questions. What are the successes and drawbacks of the hybrid learning model? What changes would you recommend to improve the model? If you phased in a grade level to attend daily for the full day, what would that grade be and why? What would it require in terms of staffing or other resources to phase in this grade? What challenges would teachers, staff, and students face with more students present in your school? What faculty and staff feedback have you gathered about the hybrid model and whether or not we should shift to bringing in more students? The leaders of the bargaining units will summarize their comments on the basis of what they've heard from their own stakeholders in their bargaining units, their membership. So we'll start now, first with the building leadership team. So I'd like, I'll remind and choreograph this if someone forgets to jump right in. But we'll start with our 3 building leadership teams, starting with Lou Adipietro and Melissa Hardesty, followed by Jennifer Spirelli and Kevin Hanlon, and then Amy Cazes and John DeCams. So we'll start there, and then I'll introduce the next segment of people who are presenting. So thank you very much, and thank you all leaders and all of the various members of your faculty and staff who contributed to what you're about to share.
There we go. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was starting, Lou. You want me? You want to start?
I just want to set the intro a little bit for us. How we've sort of planned our presentation tonight is a little bit informal. Melissa and I are going to jump in and out in different conversations because we can speak to different things a little bit better. As an assistant principal, she's more designated towards management of the building, and as principal, I'm more of the educational leader and talk a little bit more about academics. But both of us will give you our perspective of how things are going within the high school as a whole and look at it holistically. So, we've been charged, as both Lauren and Valerie have told you, we've been charged with a couple of questions to sort of guide our discussions. But I will tell you that we probably will stray a little bit from those questions so that we can give you a little bit more context as we give you some of the answers as we move forward. So, we will start with the successes, and Melissa's going to talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Hi, folks. Thanks for allowing us to give our feedback. I'll focus on some of the successes that we've seen with a hybrid model. First and foremost, it's been really effective in reducing the density of students in the building. So just the traffic flows more easily, the hallways are less crowded, and I have to give kudos to our kids, who we all adore anyway. They have been absolutely unbelievably compliant in the building with all of the new protocols and procedures. I think honestly, they're so happy to be back in the building and back to some of their normal routines. So they've been wonderful. Equally as important, we've had an increased feeling of comfort and safety with our staff and students. The classrooms have been outfitted with some clear barriers, which separate students while allowing a clearer line of sight. So we don't have to always use the sneeze guards. The teachers can see students in person 2 days per week while live streaming to the others. And I think our teachers really have worked tirelessly and really hard at improving instruction, both in person and remotely, which makes it easier for us to transition to full remote if that became necessary. All the teachers have been trained in a variety of new technological tools to improve the delivery of instruction, both in person and remotely, with all the tools and resources available to them. And we also see teachers becoming really creative and innovative. For example, we had Mr. Buchanan ran a US history socially distanced debate on Burke, which was awesome. And today Lou received a text of a koi fish that one of the PE students had caught at Sugar Pond. We threw it back, of course, we didn't kill it, we're not animal killers. Anyway, and they did this fishing lesson. They actually made their own fishing rods with twigs and string. It was really, really cool.
With that said, I mean, I do want to say, while the flow of the building is really great, and people will tell you can't see smiles from behind the masks. I will argue that you can absolutely see the smiles in their eyes. Our students are happy to be here. Our teachers are happy to be here. But I'm not going to lie to any of you and tell you that there isn't a level of anxiety that everyone has. And that includes students. When students come to our office to let us know that a teacher's mask has slipped off their nose and the teacher just continued to keep teaching because it was habit, that means that our children are nervous. When teachers are opening their windows, when it was 40 degrees the other day and the building was probably colder in the building than it was outside of the building, people are nervous. And we've talked about this plenty of times, but there still is that sense anxiety within the building, even though I think everyone really, really, really wants us to be here. With that said, you know, many of you read the letter that I sent out probably a week or so ago regarding, you know, some of the teenage behaviors, which are teenage behaviors. They're, you know, our kids are not doing anything they wouldn't normally do. But, you know, it's hard for them in a pandemic to say, you know what, I'm not going to do that because we are a small little town and it's hard. There's really nothing much for them to do, right? So they're bored. They've been bored since March. And that letter, I'm not going to lie to you, the letter was a lot stronger when it was drafted than the one that actually went out, because there was some soul searching on our part between Melissa and I about, you know, what our kids really, really need. And they need someone to tell them it's going to be all right. And someone to tell them, you know what, maybe the decision of going in the woods is not the best decision, at least not now. But many of our kids are doing the right thing. I mean, if you walked into the high school, you would notice, you know, our students are really cognizant about walking to the right and respecting other people's space. You know, we had a fire drill today, and, you know, we did a little bit of this on yesterday's fire drill, but we did more of it today, where we talked about, you know, at least give yourself some arm's length distance. You know, that may be an elementary kind of a strategy, but for our high schoolers, it actually worked because the kids really want to respect each other's space. So those are the positives. But there, you know, with all the positives, there are absolutely some drawbacks to the hybrid model. The most obvious of them all is that we don't have everyone in the building at any given point. Kids, you know, if you're on the gold cohort, you never really see anybody on the green cohort live, right? So if your friends are in the other group, you never see them in school. So you have to try to find out some time outside of school. What this pandemic has really shaped us in knowing is that school is more than just school. It's more than just academics. It's a place where kids really want to feel safe, where their social life kind of is the nexus of their social life. And as much as they complain about their principal, their assistant principal, and their teachers, they really do love us, and we love them back, and they miss us, and we miss them back. So the drawback is we don't get to see them all in the same place at the same time. What was a positive in that, you know, we do have some in-person instruction. Given the block schedule that we have, you only see each one of your classes once per week. So on a Monday, you see your periods 1, 3, 6, and 8. And on Tuesday, you see periods 2, 4, 7, and 9. So in reality, you're only in person 1 day per week per class, which is not ideal. You know, anecdotally, I can tell you that this wasn't part of any kind of statistical survey, but anecdotally, and I think Jeanette may touch on this later on in her presentation, is many of our students talked about really wanting or liking the remote 2 weeks we had at the beginning of the year, because all of them were in one place at the same time. All of them were getting all of the instruction at the same time. The live stream, while we're getting better at the live stream and teachers are taking more risks, is not perfect, is nowhere near what the remote instruction was. You know, and it's so much better than what we did back in March when we were building and flying the plane at the same time. If you think about it, at any given day, we have four cohorts of students in our buildings. We have the gold cohort, we have the green cohort, we have those who have chosen full remote, and we have those students who have an IEP who are here 4 days a week. That's a tough task for teachers to manage and to be able to meet the needs of all of those learners. And with the hybrid, you know, I can tell you that while there is a sense of security, many of our students are still nervous. As of today, I just checked the numbers, we have 90 students at the high school who have chosen a full remote option. That's 17% of our students. That's significant. And many of those students joined the remote list after the issues at Hillside and Farragut Middle School. And I'm, again, full transparency, those of you who know me, if I was a betting man, I would have bet my house that the high school would have been the first to have a case. And it turns out that it was Farragut Middle School. I still don't believe that we will be immune. And I will tell you that Melissa and I and the office staff have had our scares. The nurse has had their scares. We've used those opportunities as opportunities to work on our contact tracing protocols. We spent the time talking to the Department of Health so that in a real situation, we're ready and we're prepared to move forward. I can tell you that from a student point of view and for some teachers, Flex Wednesdays has not been perfect. I know Melissa's going to talk a little bit about that in her presentation, but I think that's an area that I think we can do better. Okay, so Melissa, you want to continue or am I up?
Nope. We're talking about changes now, right? Potential changes if we were to recommend. So we truly believe at the high school that the hybrid model has been really effective and efficient because it's given an overall sense of increased safety with the students and safety and security with the students and the staff due to the ability to manage their surroundings and effectively socially distance. We're very concerned that with an all-in model, it's just going to be nearly impossible to maintain social distancing in this building, in our facility. Other than what Lou said about the possible change or redesign of the Flex Wednesdays, we don't believe right now that that there should be any changes made.
But I will tell you that, we have been consistently looking at our practices and trying to change things up. I can tell you Drew Wendell and the building leaders have met significantly over the past couple of weeks because the weather is changing. And, while our PE teachers swear that they will go outside, whether it's like rain, shine, snow, wind, just like the mailmen are, at some point, they're going to have physical education somewhere. And our physical education teachers have marked up all of our gyms so that the 12 feet for aerobic activity is maintained. We've worked out a way to offer band and orchestra in a different location, another large location, in addition to our choral program. So we're working together to try and find opportunities so that we don't lose our instructional program, whether that be math or whether it be art and music and physical education. It really shouldn't matter. We'd like to offer our students the full educational program. And those are the conversations that we've been having continuously.
And
I
also
can tell you that. Yep.
with some of those specials, the PE and the band and chorus and orchestra, we've been working in tandem with the middle school. So we've been able to schedule and share those spaces effectively with the middle school. So they haven't lost that either, which I'm sure Jennifer and Kevin will talk about later.
And just today, yesterday and today, we're soliciting our students about anyone who would like to use a locker because we know the weather is changing. Up until this point, we have not assigned lockers because lockers become kind of like water coolers where everyone kind of congregates. And we also know at the high school that, we may assign 529 lockers and only 110 students actually use their locker. So we've actually solicited our students using Google Forms to let us know if they really want a locker and they're going to use it so that we can strategically place students all around our building and offer them the opportunity to have a locker and store all of their valuables and coats and so forth and so on. So these are things that we will keep changing as we go along. So the question was, if we would consider bringing more students into the building, who would we consider and why? And I'm kind of paraphrasing there. I have to say for many reasons, one in particular, I don't believe we should be bringing more students into the high school because of density. That's the main reason. However, the question was, should we consider a grade level at a time to come back? Well, many would argue that we should start with grade 9 because grade 9 is, if you're going to pick any grade, if anyone has almost a similar schedule, it would be our grade 9 students. And grade 9 students, all have English 9, all have World History 1, and all pretty much because of the waiver last year, all are in living environment. So those are the 3 common courses that all 9th graders have. However, they also have 3 levels or 4 levels of mathematics, starting from pre-algebra, algebra, geometry, and geometry honors. They can be in a myriad of electives. Some may be in French, some may be in Spanish, some may be in Latin. So by just bringing in the 9th grade, while you may achieve what you want to achieve in your English, social studies, and science classes, you will now cross-pollinate across other classes, K-12. Others may argue maybe it's grade 11 we should bring in because that's probably the most important year of a high schooler's career, A, for college reasons, and B, because it's very, very rigorous. So they need the extra time because of AP and SUPA and all of the college level courses. Again, 11th grade schedules across the 128 students that we have are significantly different. To find a cohort of students that can travel together or not infiltrate all of the other sections of classes is very, very difficult. So what we don't have is similar to what Hillside would have as far as cohorts of students. Our students are pretty mixed, and that's the beauty of Hastings High School, quite frankly, is that many of our courses are 9-12, and they're not segregated as 9th grade or 10th grade or 11th grade or 12th grade courses. So our opinion is by doing that, you're going to get significantly larger classes. Once those classes go from what we have now of 10 to probably 15 students, your courses are now going to be 20 to 27 students. Add on top of that your physical barriers that are in the classrooms and the fact that our building is 110 years old and our classrooms were not built to the standards that are today's New York State code for schools. Many of our classrooms are 660 square feet on a good day. I think we're looking at a safety issue. We're looking at a fire issue, quite frankly. And I'm also looking at a safety issue because social distancing would go right out the door. Melissa, you have anything else you want to add on that part?
Nope, I think you covered that all.
But I'll also tell you that you will increase the anxiety level of both staff and students in our building, and quite frankly, administrators in our building, exponentially. One of the reasons why we have 90 students on remote is because of the incidences at Hillside and at Farragut Middle School. And the fact that we wound up closing, we doubled our number in 3 days. We went from just about 45 to 50 students who are remote to at one point last week, we were at 103. Those are significant numbers. Because students and families are scared. And I'm going to tell you that equally, the staff in this building and administrators included share that anxiety, even though the science will tell you that, the lower the age of the student, the less the effects of COVID, if that's the way you want it to. But, I'm 53 years old, so I don't fall in that category. So if I get it from a student, it's the adults we need to worry about. I also worry that we're going to lose staff because they will just take leaves.
That is true. I've had several conversations, and honestly, I think the level of absenteeism is going to increase. I think the request for leaves is going to increase, and a lot of these people, I mean, they're legitimate concerns. They're very concerned for their own health, for the safety of their families. I have a number of teachers whose kids who are in districts where their kids are still all remote, so there are childcare issues. It's a difficult situation.
And even if you take the human element out of all, if you increase the density or you bring in more students and you want to really do it right, you need to split classrooms. You need to hire more teachers or need to hire more personnel, I should say. And those are resources we just don't have. I can tell you in every given period in our high school, we use every single classroom currently. In my 16 years here, this is the highest enrollment the high school has ever had. We're almost at 530 students. I started here, we were just around 400 students. And the numbers were much lower prior to me. So we are growing. And I would fear that we'd have way too many students in it to really keep everyone in our building safe.
Also, there's another issue as well, because I'm working very, very closely with the health office. If anyone knows me, I'm a germaphobe and I never went to the health office. I think I've been to the health office more times in the last 3 weeks than I have in 12 years. But we did increase the staff, but the response, they have their regular responsibilities for health and safety of the kids, but then there's all these new protocols and procedures that they have to follow for state and Department of Health regulations. And with the screener calls in the morning, so they're really stretched thin. They're really working hard. And I'm concerned that with more students in the building, we're just not going to have the manpower to address those types of needs.
And just to sum up, there was a question about what is the feedback from our faculty, our staff, and our students, and I think we've summed that up. I think we found we're sort of hitting a groove, and we're hitting a stride here where there is that level of anxiety, but everyone is doing their part, and for the most part, I can say people are happy, and I put that in quotes because it is a facetious kind of happy, but I think everyone's in it for the right reasons and doing whatever they can to make it the best that it can be. I worry that by bringing more students into the building, that tone and that tenor of our building is going to change significantly, A, and I worry, B, that we're not going to have the resources to be able to pull it off anyway.
It's like a healthy compromise, honestly, the hybrid model.
Okay, thank
Thank
you
you.
so much, Lou and Melissa. So in the interest of time, just as a reminder, there are about 11 more presentations. So I'll ask each group to please keep your comments, within the time frame, and shorten them, if you can, especially if there is something that has been repeated, just be judicious with regards to your time. So we'll hear from Jennifer Spirelli and from Kevin Hanlon, and followed by Amy, Cazes, and John DeCamps. Thank you.
Hi, first I want to express my appreciation and thank you to the board for allowing me to speak and present on our instructional models. And thank you for Lou and Melissa. I do echo all of you said, and Dr. Henning-Piedmonte, I will try to stick to that time. But first I thought it would be important to just establish, a universal understanding, since 2020 has been like no other year that we've ever experienced in our careers as educators or in our lives. And really, Kevin and I, we've done a lot of reflecting and talking, and we keep asking ourselves, what is our ultimate goal? What is our objective? And that is really, what do we want to achieve with our plan here moving forward? And in my opinion, it's twofold. We must, as educators, continue to hold the highest standards and frankly exceed those standards when it comes to, one, the education of our children, and two, their safety and well-being. And I know that we can all agree on those two facts, that they're universal with all of us. And given that framework of understanding, we have to examine all options and determine what approach and what plan we can to achieve the maximum of both of those goals without compromising whether or any of them, really. Our overall goal still continues to be, we need as many students in the school, but as safely as possible.
Thank you, Ms. Spirelli. Just hello. Thank you, Dr. Henning-Piedmonte and the Board of Education for taking the time to learn about the instructional model in Farragut Middle School and thinking about what we can do next to improve the current model. Just to quote from Farragut's goals as well as the Hastings School District, education helps to provide a person with the skills needed to succeed in a rapidly changing world, to function in harmony with the environment, to enjoy the fellowship of others, and to live cooperatively in society with respect for individual and group differences. And in this model today, this still holds true. Ms. Spirelli and I have had over 10 reentry committee meetings and 10 faculty meetings discussing each instructional model, the best practices, successes, flaws, possible enhancements, and ways to indeed create a vibrant learning community, as our district mission statement makes clear throughout each of those models. Our conversations have led to insightful discussions regarding how we can bring the best parts of FMS to all students, no matter where they are learning from. We've also polled our faculty and staff via anonymous Google Forms on their thoughts, feelings, experiences, emotions, opinions, and expertise on topics ranging from the instructional model implementations to improvements on student bathroom passes using the Google Workspace. We've taken part in many meetings with the community where we presented the happenings in Farragut Middle School, as well as answered questions and received feedback from various stakeholder groups. Ms. Spirelli and I have spent hours brainstorming with one another, reaching out to administrators of other districts. And we have drawn on and erased whiteboards countless numbers of times in order to find ways to maximize the physical space at FMS to its greatest extent. I've had one-on-one Google Meet conversations with some students who even felt the need to describe their ideas, experiences, and provide thoughts on how to improve FMS. Each step of the way, Ms. Spirelli and I have made ourselves available to each of the individual and groups who are willing to discuss, listen, and find ways to make Farragut Middle School the best it can possibly be with all the constraints we have to work under this year.
The struggle that we face as building administrators is that each plan, each schedule, each creative idea that we have demonstrates flaws that we are not willing to compromise. Mr. Hanlon and I have shared examples of our plans and challenges with the board already, but we want to just speak more to them now. First, I want to talk a little bit about our hybrid learning plan. Our green and gold cohorts are separated as far apart as possible in each of the classrooms. And according to the New York State guidelines, social distancing between to occur at least 6 feet apart. But according to the Department of Health, individuals can be 6 feet apart or with barriers. So this is where we have really focused as a district. Considering that the building is over 110 years old, some of the classroom sizes, as Lou already mentioned, are not conducive to accommodating the needs of the number of desks of spacing for 6 feet apart with social distancing. Traditionally, teachers would arrange the student desks in groups for flexible seating to foster student-to-student communication. But because of COVID and the guidelines, as you've seen in my photos that I've shared with the board, it's not possible to do that. And by keeping the students in rows so that we can follow these guidelines, we are not able to maximize the classroom space of our 600 square foot classrooms. This has guided us to be dependent on our student and staff barriers. And a big thank you to the facility staff, just absolutely incredible for how they've been so quick to respond and helpful through this, providing us new clear barriers as well as our sneeze guards that were also purchased early on in the summer. With our reduced density hybrid model, there is a current feeling of safety for the faculty and staff, as Lou and Melissa also did share. Our student desks, shields, the sneeze guards, our standing student barriers, our standing clear teacher barriers, and of course the mask wearing has helped provide that safety. And it's just really invaluable. It's what is holding the glue together right now. When students are in the classroom, they are engaged, happy, and enjoying their time at FMS, and really do a credit to the students for their maturity and positivity. And I think Ms. Hardesty hit it right on the head, and she said they're just really happy to be here and participating, and we're happy to have them here. Some of the other highlights from our hybrid plan is that students are in school for 2 full consecutive days or 14 hours a week. Having those 2 full consecutive days helps students cycle through all of the classes and their electives. Transitions, there's lunch periods, there's recess periods. All these experiences look and feel different, but the feedback has really shown that it's beneficial and students are having their interactions and their social engagements and they're enjoying it. When we explored other models, we found that these student interactions were lacking and the time in school was actually a little less. So one of the reasons why we do really favor the hybrid model. As we do move forward, though, we're still even striving to increase the student amount of time in school for our face-to-face learners. Another highlight of the hybrid is the consistency for students in both cohorts. Even with moving from remote to hybrid, back to remote again, and then back to hybrid, our students and staff did it very seamlessly. I was very impressed. And I think that really, it spoke to the consistency of the schedule with the 9 periods and being able to have a routine. Another important success of hybrid is that students are receiving synchronous instruction, which was a big focus for us. As we explored other models, it was near impossible to avoid having asynchronous instruction. And this was just an important non-negotiable that we did not want to part with or compromise on. All staff recognized that remote teaching had to improve over the referred to emergency teaching from the spring. And just to be clear, when I say emergency teaching, I'm not referring to Hastings, I'm referring to all schools in the country. So credit to the students and staff for really engaging and participating in our remote teaching. The staff has since increased their own technology skills and engaged with, thank you to Melissa Szymanski for the determination and support for all of our teachers to really improve their own technology schools and web-based platforms to help with our synchronous instruction for all students. As I mentioned earlier, there just is not one model that fits all of our goals. Looking at some of the drawbacks to our current model of hybrid is that teachers are visibly struggling with teaching to two different environments. Just to quote one teacher, this really has struck with me even weeks ago. Teacher said that he's floundering at finding a way to adjust my face-to-face lessons to my remote learners. And that really touched me because this teacher is really focusing on how to connect with the remote learners and make his lessons engaging, just as he would for his face-to-face learners, his in-person learners. Teachers have been improving and finding ways to adjust their pedagogy for the remote learners, and staff have shared more struggling with monitoring even the two classrooms for behaviorally. Even though in middle school there's no behavioral problems, but every once in a while there is, and it is a challenge when you do have the two classrooms to monitor at the same time. And many students in the physical classroom are finding it difficult to see the teacher's board. As I shared again with those photos, sitting down in the seat and having the sneeze guards around you, if you are in the back, it is difficult to see the teacher's board and even to see the teacher in front of you. And one of our fears is that this is even going to be more challenging as we add more students into the building. So I know it sounds a little bit like a contradiction, saying that one thing is a positive and a negative at the same time, but more PPE gives students and staff safety precautions and a sense of safety, but at the same time, it creates more of a challenge with visuals and engagement in the classroom. I'd like to share some improvements. Like any model that we do, any quality change model, it's important to reflect and revise. And I'd like to share what we'd like to do to change our current hybrid model. To start, we would like to organize recess better, promote some activities with social distancing, and we have a great resource, recess monitors, and along with Drew Wendell, we're going to come up with some creative ideas, and we already have already. We've ordered tents that were on back order, and thanks to the facilities department and really, I think, bothering the company, we're getting those tents for our outdoor cafeteria space for rainy days. We realize that those rainy days have not been ideal, but those tents have been ordered and are coming. We look to clear out Farragut Gym. Right now it's utilized for storage, and to continue to maximize all the space in the building, we want to create a second indoor cafeteria space. So we need to move all the furniture out of Farragut Gym so we can do that. We'd also like to hire more monitors to support that second indoor eating space along with the cafeteria for when it gets too cold. So we're thinking ahead that way. We want to also create some movements and transitions for fifth grade to their elective classes. Right now, art is pushing in, world language is pushing in, technology. They are going for the classrooms, but music is pushing in, and I think in library, is also pushing into the fifth grade. So to really get most of those classes and engage in art with the materials and the library, with the resources of the books of the actual library itself, we'd like to help support some safe transition and movements for our fifth graders. Of course, working with Mr. Wendell, as I mentioned, to really help with utilize the PE spaces and thinking about those spaces creatively. We've implemented Hastings Healthy Reminders, weekly robocalls and text messages to continue to promote mask wearing and social distancing. We've made announcements during the day to remind students about social distancing and mask wearing. And we're working with Melissa Szymanski and the Remote Learning Committee to really improve Flex Wednesdays. And I know that that's a big lift and a big change, but we're very focused to make that instructional time more valuable on Wednesdays. And lastly, we found creative ways to add the use of lockers as well for grades 5th through 8th grade, similar to what the high school is. So that's also on our mind as an improvement for the hybrid plan and providing lockers so students aren't carrying those heavy backpacks.
As for some challenges, staffing and physical classroom space are the two main impediments to phasing in another grade level, as the biggest challenges that we're facing would keep the student density in the classrooms at the same levels they are currently, while keeping students socially distanced in the learning spaces as much as possible. Also, given the number of shared staff members both in each grade level, as well as those who teach at Hastings High School as well, is another impediment. To maintain the small cohorts of students at FMS, we would need to hire another team of elementary school teachers to teach to the opposite color cohort. Not only another set of teachers or teaching assistants, but the lack of available instructional space is something that we cannot work around. For almost every class period in Farragut Middle School, we are at capacity for room utilization, leaving us unable to split a classroom into 2 classrooms. Ideas such as utilizing the gymnasium space, the auditorium space, the indoor cafeteria, and the library for additional classroom space have been brainstormed and worked through, and we're able to repurpose the library for additional instructional space. But utilizing those other spaces with relation to the need for indoor eating space, music space, and physical education classes, we were unable to do that, to use the outside space. We've also had many conversations with the high school administration, Ms. Hardesty, Mr. Adipietro, on allocating those shared spaces and making the most of the limited physical space that we have in the Farragut complex. Right now, there are 15 staff members who see 5th grade students, as well as 7th and 8th grade students. And bringing more students in, these teachers will have much more exposure than some other teachers and students in the building. Students will soon be coming indoors to eat their lunch and have their recess, and we'll need to hire additional monitors to keep the students socially distanced in the hallways and eating in multiple indoor dining spaces, including the indoor cafeteria and the repurposement of the Farragut Gymnasium as an indoor dining space. Hiring additional substitute teachers would be necessary due to staff taking the appropriate precautions when it comes to their own health and the health of their family members. We've had students, faculty, and staff come forward with concerns of lack of social distancing at time during the school day when we're in this hybrid model. And bringing in more students at this time under these conditions will lead to even a more heightened sense of anxiety and an increase in the number of students and teachers staying home for their personal health concerns and the health concerns of their family members, just as Mr. Adipietro and Ms. Hardesty had mentioned before. The middle school currently has 60 full-time remote students, which is approximately 12% of our student population. And we have had and are still covering teachers on a daily basis, whether from leaves of absences or daily coverages. At times, the current faculty is covering anywhere from 3 to 6 full-time teaching positions throughout the course of the day. And just counting to date, the FMS teachers have had to cover 124 classes for fellow teachers. If you look at the averages, a teacher teaching 5 classes a day in the middle school, that equates to about 25 full days of coverage with just teachers helping one another out. This also increases exposure to both the students and staff, with teachers being bounced around from classroom to classroom for coverages. One of the biggest concerns with phasing at a grade level is the attendance of our faculty and staff members. We're concerned that there would be more staff taking leaves of absences if the student density in FMS is increased, just as the Hastings High School had mentioned earlier. The faculty and staff at FMS, though, have been nothing short of amazing and resilient since we began the school year. Teachers are teaching one another ways to engage all students, no matter where those students are learning. The faculty and staff are doing things now that they have never been asked to do before, ever, and are doing so while making their best efforts to keep Farragut Middle School a vibrant learning community. At this time, the faculty and staff at FMS overwhelmingly feel that bringing in more students to the middle school would not be safe for the students, faculty, or staff.
So just in closing, to share that every day we are on alert about a potential COVID case and starting contact tracing, and we have had our fair shares even after our incident. Anxiety is extremely high for the staff. They are concerned about the possible exposure and quarantine given the incidents of both Hillside and Farragut. And just a public thank you to our 10 staff members and 43 students who already have quarantined this year. They put their lives on hold, still taught their classes from home, and did what was necessary for the safety of the community. The majority of the faculty and staff feel the same relative anxiety, but are embracing the hybrid model. There is little to no support for an all-in approach. And we are concerned there may be an increase in absenteeism and potential leaves in the all-in model, as Kevin just mentioned. We also must realize that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach to arriving at a solution. A model that might work in one community might not necessarily be the best fit or the smartest approach for another community. There are so many factors and moving parts about each campus's space, building size, budgets, social, emotional, and academic needs, and not to mention the varying degrees of social economical factors of the community. So we've taken this all into consideration, all the facts and feedback from our students, staff, parents, and faculty. And it's really factored in the very real uncertainty of the existence and volatility of COVID in our community. We strongly believe that the continuation of the hybrid model is the most viable, responsible, and most certainly the safest model to embrace and adopt at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer and Kevin. Amy and John.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us to share a little bit about Hillside with you. We're going to start off with some of the successes that we've seen with our hybrid AM/PM model. And the first piece that I want to note is the unbelievable team we have at Hillside. Our Hillside Reentry Committee is comprised of 25 volunteer teachers and staff members and administrators. And this team has really come together literally at all hours of the day and evening to develop, monitor, and refine a shared vision. And that has been instrumental because we have shifted multiple times. This team is the team that has really thought about this hybrid AM/PM model. The dream came from the fact that we wanted our youngsters to be able to have the opportunity to come to school every day, not only to see their teachers, to see their peers, but also to develop routine, because we know in the life of a young child, consistency and routine is instrumental. We've seen very clearly that this routine has a positive impact, not only on our children, with the social emotional aspects in their organization, but it has had a positive impact on our community because parents can plan and know that their children will be well taken care of when they come to school. We're also very pleased with the AM/PM model in the sense that it allows us to provide students with core instruction in person. Of course, with our remote learners experiencing that same instruction through the video conference. And this has been very beneficial for our students because they're still experiencing readers workshop and writers workshop and their math lesson, and they're getting that core instruction from their classroom teacher live. We are also finding that the AM/PM model has had significant benefits to our students that have been identified as high needs. It gives our students that are identified as high needs more time to be able to be at school. And it also gives us the opportunity to give them a 60-minute time of special area right in the middle of the day. So in fact, we're looking at more minutes of instructional time for our students who show the highest need. We've also been working in the AM/PM model to ensure that any related services or supports are provided at the opposite time of the day. So whether it is related services, whether it is MTSS, any of those services are provided on the flip side of the day so that students aren't missing the mandated minutes of school. In addition, our AM/PM model gives us the opportunity to offer 2 special areas to our students twice daily. And that's pretty nice. That's all done through the video conferencing for grades 1 through 4. And then for kindergarten, it is in person. Probably the most significant benefit that we love about the AM/PM model is the reduced class size. And this allows us to really individualize instruction, to give each child what they need and to focus on meeting the child right where they are and being able to move each child forward. Of course, it is also clear that the AM/PM model allows us to reduce exposure. Our children come in through their special door, they go right to their classroom, they're in their classroom for 2 hours and 20 minutes, and then they leave the building and go back home. And that allows us to make sure that their risk of exposure is much lower. It's limited the transitions. We're not having children walking around the building to go to a special, to go to lunch, to go to recess. And in addition, the time of lunch is eliminated. So there's not a time during the day where masks are off. And that's been a real priority and a benefit of the AM/PM model. The AM/PM model has really given us the opportunity to set up a system that prioritizes the welfare and the safety of our kids. And when we looked at the minutes of the AM/PM model, and we actually compared the minutes of a typical school day, you know, looking back at last year, a typical school day has 320 instructional minutes. because there is a 60 to 65-minute period of lunch and recess and snack time. When we look at the AM/PM school day, there's 200 minutes of instructional time plus 80 minutes of that independent time. We don't have that lunch, recess, and snack time in school. And when we look at the AM/PM school day for our all-day students, we actually see, believe it or not, even more minutes. Our all-day students are getting 340 minutes. So we're being able to really give them the extra support that they need. Of course, in any model, and especially in a model in a pandemic, it's not perfect. And we recognize that there are some drawbacks of this model, with the number one being the strain on our families, because our families are working on childcare as well as supporting their children with the instruction for the half of the day that the children are home. The other negative, which is a negative really of COVID, is our limited time for socialization. Because we don't have lunch and recess at school, students are less able to talk with peers and socialize. That being said, that really is a function of COVID. During our lunchtime, when we have students at school, one child sits at a lunch table. So whereas in past years, we would have about 6 children at a lunch table, now in order to keep social distance, we have 1 child. So we see that this is a drawback, not only of this model, but of COVID in itself. We also recognize that a drawback is there's an additional staffing need, because we have a great deal of supervision that is necessary between the arrivals, going through different doorways, the hallway supervision, and related service supervision. So we are seeing that there is certainly a need for an increase in our staffing. I'd also like to address some changes that are recommended. And our changes, really, many of them have already been implemented, because we recognize that this is, this is a living experience, and we are making adjustments literally daily. The first change that we've already addressed is in regard to shared spaces. When we had the situation where a student tested positive, we quickly realized that the Department of Health chose to quarantine not only close contacts, but proximate contacts. So this is a person who is in the same 4 walls, yet may not be anywhere near the child, in fact, is more than 6 feet away. Because we didn't realize that, we realize now that we needed to further limit the contact and not have students that are in different grade levels in the same space. So we've already worked to reduce that contact. In addition, we are working with the Department of Health to be able to identify other spaces and arrangements of those spaces that will allow us greater flexibility. We are also always looking at our supervision. It is our goal to make sure that we're using our staff in the most effective way possible. Of course, this has been a recommendation on our list, and it has come up early on in the summer as well, which is the remote teachers. Unfortunately, our numbers don't allow for it. Our largest grade of remote students has 13 remote students, so it's not enough for a full class. And because of that, this makes it incredibly difficult to be able to assign any remote teachers. We also recognize that as time goes on, there's going to be continual changes, and we'll continue to address them as they come. John.
Good evening, everyone. And so the first question that I was asked to respond to, if there was a phase in of another grade level into attending Hillside daily for a full day, what grade would that be? Developmentally, we think it would make most sense to phase in our youngest learners, first grade being the next. Based on their current age and readiness for independence, these are our students who need the most support from family members at home, family members and caregivers at home while working remotely. In terms of staffing or other resources that would be needed to phase in another grade, first grade. First, as we all know, space continues to be not only an issue at the middle school and the high school, but especially at Hillside as well. Even prior to March and COVID hitting our country, our building was essentially maxed out and exploding at the seams. On average, our classrooms are not designed to accommodate the full rosters that we have per section for grade levels to maintain appropriate social distancing. Something that we've seen in our AM/PM model with 2 arrivals and 2 dismissal periods during the day This also limits space that we do currently have, including outdoor spaces such as the front playground that are used for dismissal, student pickup in particular, and at the same time is doubling as a space for some of our physical education classes happening outdoors at that time. In addition, there are spaces for our all-day students eating lunch that are also necessary to maintain social distance. And because we have all-day learners who not only need to eat lunch during the day, but also receive their special area classes virtually during this midday block time, the space has become even more limited. So it's pretty obvious to see that space would be something that would be required for an additional grade level. And then most notably, staffing would be an issue. I've looked at our special areas and it looks like it would be approximately 0.33 FTE more special areas if we would need to accommodate the increase and maintain the current schedule that we have. The reason why there would be an additional staff needed for this is because in our virtual environment, similar to the secondary level, our homerooms for some grade levels are combined for special areas. And if learning was to happen for our first grade, full day for in person, those sections would have to be split up. What challenges would teachers, staff, and students face with more students present in our school? Again, as I was just touching on a second ago, the greatest challenge that we see would be scheduling. Since September, our master schedule has been created and recreated 3 separate times. And then with each revision, we are seeing new problems that arise. And the schedule that we currently are in for the AM and PM for our special areas cannot hold only 1 grade rolling in at a time. The only way that it would actually work is if for all grades would be rolling in 1 through 4, in addition to the kindergarten that's already attending in full day, and back into what our typical schedule is, which is a 44-minute special area, 1 time per day for each student. Another challenge that we would see is that we would most likely see an increasing amount of children learning remotely. We feel that families definitely feel safer in our AM and PM model because of the less density. Currently, teachers have few remote students, approximately 42 across the entire building. Safety continues to be a concern of our families, which we hear, which is also demonstrated by additional families choosing this model after the positive COVID case at Hillside. In addition, we do feel that teachers will feel unsafe. We've heard from them with students being unable to maintain social distance in classrooms around the school based on social distancing measures and the square footage in each. Specials for our all-day students in grades 1 through 4 were just changed to video conferencing in order to lessen the contact density for special area teachers. And by bringing in another grade level, such as first grade, that would greatly increase the contact for these teachers and therefore, and students, and increase the exposure between the kindergarten and first grade levels. And finally, because across our building, our first grade classrooms are smaller in square footage, minimizing social distancing possibilities, and we would continue to have limited outdoor space for special areas by bringing in another grade level. And finally, another great concern from having more students present in the school would be lunchtime, where, as the weather becomes colder and students have to move inside, we would have more students unmasked for a greater period of time. In addition to that, if there would be additional students in the building, we would have to increase staffing, such as lunch monitors to supervise another grade level. And then finally, if we do increase the number of students at Hillside, our AM arrival and PM dismissal bus runs would also increase, therefore mixing students and limiting the ability to social distance on buses.
So when we think about staff feedback, we are lucky that we have not only the Hillside Reentry Committee, but we also have our leadership team at Hillside. And we've been meeting regularly with both groups of teachers and staff members. to really understand their perspective, to foster that culture of collaboration and trust, and to make sure that we're hearing all perspectives. And it is unanimous among grades 1 through 4 that staff does not feel that bringing more students back to school at this time is a move that would be sensible. In fact, it's even been shared that they feel that it is reckless. Teachers have been flexible. Teachers have been working tirelessly to be able to meet the constant changes that we've had at Hillside. But it's very difficult. It's very difficult to be able to change on a dime the full instruction. We've even been very flexible in our students being able to choose remote or in person. So some families started out as remote and then decided they wanted to come in to the AM/PM. And then when we had a positive case, they went back to remote. And now some of them are opting back into AM/PM. And we're trying to be very flexible with our families. But our educators are doing their very best to be able to make sure that every child has the best possible opportunity, but it's not sustainable. We need to make sure that we are focused, and our focus right now is to keep Hillside open. Our focus right now is to keep the AM/PM model and to make sure that all of our learners can get the best possible education. Thank you.
I want to thank each of the principals, the building leaders for providing their overview of the current model and suggestions for going forward and improvements. In the next set of presenters, if in order for the board to have opportunity to have discussion prior to 7:30, if you could please distill your comments to the most essential remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lauren, for that reminder. So we'll start with Melissa Samaski, who will talk about the Flex Wednesday model, followed by our special education leaders, Laura Sullivan and Tessa Stewart, and then we'll hear from 3 of our ENL teachers, Desiree, Kristen, and Chadia.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I will distill. So Flex Wednesdays. So I will speak to a few different things. What faculty and staff feedback has been gathered around Flex Wednesdays, the recommended changes to improve Flex Wednesdays, and additional resources that would be needed to implement those changes. So faculty feedback has been gathered in a variety of different ways, and that's through faculty surveys, the remote learning committee, faculty meetings that we've attended district-wide, individual exchanges, and through meetings with the ENL department, which have actually increased most recently. So a number of our faculty members responded to a brief survey first. It was very, very simple, and it was really around preference for model of Flex Wednesday, knowing that we were going to take a more critical look. So the question was, leave it as is or revert back to a regular schedule. And the majority of our faculty members wanted to leave it as is. We followed up with a more specific survey because it was important that once we started gathering additional information from the stakeholders, we had more depth of understanding. And that actually showed a bit more. So while most people were saying that they were, they were in favor of Flex Wednesdays, fewer people rated them as excellent than as good. In terms of describing the amount of work that's been assigned during Flex Wednesdays, 94% were saying that they gave an appropriate amount of work. And I'm mentioning that because that is not necessarily echoed in other stakeholder feedback. How would you rate the value of student advisory? So overall, that was favorable, and most faculty members rated student advisory as either good or excellent. How many students do you typically meet with during a typical 20-minute Flex Wednesday? The majority of our faculty members reported meeting with 1 to 3 students during their 20-minute Flex period. Additional feedback themes that emerged through culling some of the short answer reports was very, very mixed. So many faculty members reported that the belief in providing in-person instruction. There was a theme around shifting the structure of Flex Wednesday to either a 2-hour delay or a regular day. Some wanted to provide period by period instruction and revert back to a more structured schedule. There was a theme around creating longer periods and more time to meet with students, reduce assignments, increase accountability for students assigned to sessions. It was reported that a number of students were assigned to attend and then didn't attend. Reduce conflicts within the Flex Wednesday schedule. So there were core areas that were scheduled, and then there was an other section, and there were some interactions that were happening there that were unintended. There was a request for more team collaboration time for planning. A theme around increasing application of professional learning now that the resources have been introduced. And that was echoed by this idea of content area specific professional learning. A need to further develop advisory. And then finally, this idea that Flex Wednesdays have the potential to be very successful, but that time is needed to enhance them. And I want us to hold on to that point because I believe that that's actually very important. With regard to the purpose of Flex Wednesdays, we were very clear in the reentry plan outlining it that they are instructional days and they need to be instructional days. That is not something that is negotiable. The design of student contact time with teachers has been differentiated to take into account the developmental needs of learners at the different levels, and that on Wednesday afternoon, teachers will work with small groups of students via video conferences for review, support, feedback, assessment, interventions, assistance for students who may be falling behind, and enrichment. And then assignments would be provided for students to work on instructional in nature when they're not meeting with their teachers. So I want to delve into some of the feedback that we received through surveys through the different stakeholder groups. So with faculty, we had 119 respondents, students, 883 respondents, parents, 593 respondents. And with the faculty, that was with, again, that first survey that was administered. So again, comparing the idea of what should become Flex Wednesdays across stakeholder groups, the highest support and feedback for Flex Wednesdays as they currently existed came from our faculty members. That was followed by our students who also rated Flex Wednesdays largely favorably, and parents rated them largely unfavorably. Feedback was gathered through the use of a survey, also exchanges with our student board liaison. Our board student liaison meetings allowed for some smaller group conversation, but really the meat of this came through the largely implemented survey. 67% of our students rated them positively. However, half of our students, 49%, reported either a significant workload or too much work. Half of our students reported lower levels of stress. However, 30% reported higher or significantly higher levels of stress. 46% rated the types of assignments that were given either neutrally, giving it a rating of fair, or poor. 58% rated advisory favorably, 42% unfavorably. And when it came to frequent small group individualized instruction, so this was who was receiving it frequently. Across grades 5 through 12, that was 112 students. And that's across both the middle and the high school. 9% also reported frequent peer leadership and our club meetings. Additional themes in student feedback: don't change it, get rid of it, make it a regular instructional day. So again, wildly different. Give less work. There was a very strong theme of less busy work, tedious work, fluff, pointless work. People called it different things. But regardless of intention, that was the perception that was coming through the survey. Earlier posting of assignments, make it a catch-up day, eliminate advisory, or shift to a more organized schedule. Our parent data was gathered primarily through the use of a survey as well. And also we heard a lot through superintendent's chats, public comment at board meetings, individual exchanges. 35.9% of parents rated Flex Wednesdays positively, with the majority of parents rating Flex Wednesday as not positive. 46% reported not enough work. 61% rated the types of assignments that were given either neutrally as fair or poor. 55% rated advisory unfavorably. And when parents were reporting on students attending frequent small group individualized instruction, the report came through that it was 60 students that were receiving that frequently. Additional parent feedback, again, wildly disparate. So it ranged from don't change it at all to get rid of it, make it a regular instructional day. More interesting assignments, authentic assignments, less busy work. So again, that theme came through. More group work, collaboration, limit the assignments to certain days, periods, or teachers, earlier posting of assignments, eliminate advisory, more FaceTime with teachers. Around improving Flex Wednesdays, some recommendations were make it a half day of regular instruction, make it an AM/PM model, alternate the golden green, ACE, BDF, have them in person, start them earlier, more structure. So broadly, looking across all of this information, the critical takeaways, there's this pattern of the asynchronous learning. So what's happening when students and teachers are not together? Across the parent and the student group as being busy work rather than robust is the perception. The desire for additional interactions with students, the desire for additional interactions between students, an expressed need for additional structure and concerns about advisory. So moving to proposed actions, before I move any further, I just want to recognize that hearing this feedback is hard. And I think, it's particularly hard because living within the system, I know that everybody is working to their utmost capacity. Everyone has an overflowing plate. Everyone has good intentions for students. And so we are presuming goodwill system-wide, and that's really important. When we are thinking about next steps around Flex Wednesdays, because there's so much mixed feedback, it makes it that much harder to be able to move forward and disagree and commit. So I want to put that out there because I think that it's very, very important for any team, and that includes all of our stakeholders, that when we move forward together, we may disagree. And in this case, the survey data shows that we absolutely will be disagreeing, but we need to disagree and commit in support of all of our students and support of the instructional core, the interactions between teachers, students, and content. I want to recognize and thank our remote learning committee. We've had quite a journey together, and our recent past 3 meetings have been particularly memorable. We started the school year and we met earlier on, and despite the more global feedback across the middle and high school, the remote learning committee participants were feeling very strongly initially that Wednesday should just go back to a regular instructional day because of this need around that interaction and that instructional core and having that FaceTime with students. And then following some more survey data and living it for a little while, there was more of a feeling of how can we make it better? Like, what can we do to make it better? Where can we tweak things? And again, I want to go back to some of the feedback that did come from the teacher group around, Flex Wednesdays can be great if we have a little more time to work on it and enhance it. I raised some concerns with the group. So through the data analysis process, there really is a question of whether or not we are providing instruction, meaning that it is an instructional day for all of our learners. There is not a doubt in my mind that teachers have been working around the clock to populate their Google Classrooms. They've self-reported assignments from readings, worksheets, and videos were the top 3 actually that came back in terms of what they were assigning. But within the remote learning committee, I raised this notion of the difference between instructional work and instruction. and thinking about the numbers of students that are experiencing learning directly with a teacher during that flex time, it does raise some questions. And it raises questions not only for student learning, but also from the logistics around state aid. You know, thinking about what is it that we're providing and is it defensible as a full instructional day? The committee was originally, in thinking about that, and I brought that to the table as something that was really not negotiable to talk about, which was that I had concerns coming through the survey around how students were experiencing their learning and these clear reports around themes around the types of assignments being received. And again, I say this without judgment, this is what the data is showing. And the group was originally thinking that with that in mind, and with the notion that we would need to evolve Flex Wednesdays, and this idea that students did need more contact time with their teachers, the original proposal from the Remote Learning Committee was to convert it to an instructional day with a 2-hour delayed late start. We began thinking a little bit about what that could look like in terms of that 2-hour delay morning portion of time, which would also maintain a protection of professional learning and team collaboration from collaborative planning. And one of the things that, thinking that through and whether or not that could be, that could work, we talked about the possibility of making that morning time book clubs. Could that be something that's instructional? But again, teachers cannot be in both facilitating book club mode as they're in professional learning mode. So it's a matter, again, around instruction. And so from a district perspective, in spite of the journey that we've had as a remote learning committee, the recommendation is to convert Flex Wednesday back to an instructional day. So that October 28th would be the final Flex Wednesday. We would explore creative options to provide that space for professional learning, because that is something that is really important. And then looking at the planning time, it does exist for teachers within the schedule, and it's something we can certainly take another look at to see if there are some additional opportunities. But that is the recommendation, is to convert Wednesdays back to an instructional day. Again, Flex Wednesdays only currently exist at the middle and high. And I really want to thank everyone who's been involved in this process, even if it's just providing a pinch of feedback, because it's very important to see how students are experiencing their learning. So I would like to now turn it over to our ENL teachers who have come.
Actually, Melissa, we're going to go to special education first.
Okay.
The special education leaders and then our ENL educators. And as a reminder, if everyone could really consolidate their comments so that we're at 6:51 right now. So we don't want to go past 7:30. And as Ms. Berman mentioned earlier, it's really important for the board to have an opportunity to ask questions. So please be, pretty targeted in what you share. And thank you so much again for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Henning-Piedmonte. Tessa and I are going to probably speak quickly because most of what we were going to say has already been shared in terms of the successes and drawbacks in each of the building levels. So we can just kind of touch on a couple things and, move quickly through. So Tessa, did you want to start in terms of what we see as the successes?
Sure. So I will try to be as succinct as possible, as well as try to cover, the feedback we receive from all our stakeholders. So success-wise, we've had the benefit of having students in the middle school and high school for 4 days of in-person instruction, and at Hillside for 5 days for in-person instruction. And, this opportunity has been super valuable for our most vulnerable learners to access consistent in-person instruction from both an academic and a behavioral standpoint. In addition, we're one of the very few schools locally, that are offering this option for all special education students to be at this ratio. And that, has been tremendous, and that could only be done through the flexibility of our teachers, our aides, our monitors, and community members. So I would like to give kudos to them if I don't get a chance to, just for working with us through the various changes that we've had through since August until now.
And some of the drawbacks that we have noticed with our environments really came from the quarantine that happened at Hillside. And as Amy spoke to, what the Department of Health considers to be proximate contact, which was not something that we had expected. So we had to make revisions to our plan, which included trying to eliminate cross contact across the grades. Amy spoke to how we've done that with the lunch and recess, but we also had to do that. Some of the drawbacks of that was to look at moving related services to remote only. And limiting our opportunities for mainstreaming. We're going to talk a little bit more about our remote learning plan, but that was a drawback. The other thing that we found is that even with offering a full day, we do have families that are not taking advantage of having their children in for the full day. And we have sent out a survey that went out today that is looking at why families may have been changing and either going from more time in to less time in, or less time in to more time in. And the purpose of that is because we really want to make sure that we're looking at what are those reasons. Some of them just may be personal choices, safety, but if there's other reasons on things that we're missing, we want to be able to address that. And so that is a survey that went out this afternoon, and we're looking forward to that. But just to give you an idea of who is in a full day at Hillside right now, 3 out of 9 students are attending a full day in first grade, 10 out of 19 in second grade, 7 out of 12 in third grade, and 11 out of 17 in fourth grade.
So I just to piggyback off of what Laura just said. So the biggest drawback, as some might know, is prior to the pandemic, we had the philosophy, the culture, and our vision for inclusion. And due to the legal guidance of COVID and social distancing, those plans have to be modified, and we can't fully implement them how we wanted. In addition, in August, prior to planning what our model would look like, we issued a survey to the families to see what families would want 2 days of in-person instruction as opposed to 4 days of in-person instruction. And at that juncture, 131 families had responded, and 83% had opted for 4 days of in-person instruction and 16 for 2 days. And those numbers, as different cases pop up and more information becomes available, are shifting.
The next question was, what changes would we recommend to improve the model? Top change is really to bring related services back into in-person. To think about what we've learned from the Department of Health when we had so many people quarantined, but also how can we take that information and really get our children back into to in-person services. Part of our survey is also asking families if that is what they want. We have had families even prior to the shutdown that have requested to have their related services in remote. And we have also had families that have requested to not have their children in any group sessions. And again, this is for safety, and we totally respect that and understand that. So we're trying to build a model in which we can honor the hard decisions that families make with regards to the related services, but also trying to provide the environment that is giving them the opportunity for their children to succeed. So ideally, that's what we're working on now currently with our teachers and with the administration of how do we bring back the in-person related services.
As far as for the middle school and high school, things are moving, we believe, pretty well there as well. And if the transition to add another day of in-person instruction is going to be implemented, that could only be better. But like Laura said, our goal is to try to get as much in-person related services to the students as possible.
The next question was, what was our plan? We put in a question of what was our plan to address the improvement in terms of the related services, because we see that as a drawback right now. I want to start by thanking our related service providers and our special education team. Typically, our related service providers are the ones that set the schedules in the beginning because they're working with so many different grades. I cannot tell you how many times they have had to change their schedules. They have an AM schedule, a PM schedule, a remote schedule, a hybrid schedule, a half day, a 2 day, a 4 day. It's just been incredible the amount of times, and there's never been a complaint. It's just, okay, we're going to make this work. So they're really in it for the success, and I really just wanted to let them know how much we appreciate that.
Our goal is to provide in-person services to those families that are comfortable and choose to do so. We've talked about sending out the survey. One of the barriers that we may run into is finding space. And we all know that Hillside, everyone has spoken about it already, Hillside does not have the space. But in order to do this, we do need to find the space because we do have to make sure that we are following the guidance of New York State, as well as what the restrictions that Department of Health has put on us. So we need to be really creative and try and work through that. And looking at hopefully not having to add more support staff so that we don't want to have to move to just having people working with certain grade levels. So we're trying to not have to add additional support staff, but that is also one of the things that we are having to think about in terms of the bringing back the related services in person.
There are certain students that receive certain mandated related services. For instance, speech, some students might have difficulty with articulation, so that continues to be a challenge. And, we've been working, and thankfully for SEPTA, our Special Education Teachers Parent Association, they've been working to order some clear masks for the students in smaller sizes to help support them. And, they've done an excellent job of helping to support and to work with the related service providers and as well as the students.
They also purchased the clear masks for every one of the staff members. So that was very appreciative. The feedback that we've received is really thinking about really how do we support our remote only.
Excuse me, Laura. I'm sorry. I really do appreciate all of the further comments that you have. It's 7 p.m. and I know that there are several other speakers that have some prepared comments, and I know that the board would like to have an opportunity to hear a summary recommendation from the superintendent and make questions and provide input. So I don't know if there are any final thoughts that you haven't shared, Laura, and then I apologize for interrupting. And then if future continuing speakers could really abbreviate your comments to the most essential points so that we can get to an opportunity to have discussion. Thank you.
You can move on. I don't want to take up any more time. I understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And now we'll hear from Desiree, Kristen, and Chadia. June couldn't be with us, and they are the English language learner teacher or the TESOL teachers of students of other languages. So they will very briefly share with us the impact of and the successes of the students and concerns relative to the hybrid model. And then we will go quickly to Drew and then Joe and Maureen, and then we will close with our bargaining unit presidents who are here. Thank you so much again.
Hi, thank you. I'm actually speaking for Chadia Madera as well, as she couldn't get childcare to be here. And I will be as brief as possible. So thank you to the board and the administration for having the ENL department tonight. I'm going to start by saying for the hybrid model in general that benefit for ELLs, English language learners, is that they do have the option to attend school 4 days in person. The negative or the downfall to that is when there is a push-in or a co-teaching model with an ENL teacher and a mainstream teacher, and we have some ENL students in the classroom and then some ENL students who have chosen only 2 days of instruction and they are from home, we have found it difficult to be able to meet the needs for all students in that type of model. Speaking for specifically differentiating for a specific student who may be remote, not being able to one-on-one speak to that student, privacy concerns. We used to use Google Hangout for that in the beginning of the school year. That was taken away from the district. And also we have tried using multiple meets at a time, which has just created issues as well. And if we talk specifically about Flex Wednesdays, that has been very beneficial for ENL students specifically because Flex Days do allow ENL teachers to provide small group instruction and give that one-to-one service that we might be lacking during other times of the school day. So for struggling students, we are able to work with them and help them catch up if they are falling behind for a Flex Wednesday model. The downfall of that is that ENL is not actually listed in a Flex Wednesday schedule. So speaking for me and the department as well, working across multiple grade levels and trying to schedule particular meets. For example, if I work with two separate 8th grade classes in the same subject area, it's hard to schedule to see every single one of the L's during the time that may have been mandated for them to be in their content area or in another area in general. So we have used the other slot, we have used the X slot, but that has also created difficulties as well. So a solution to the problem would just be able to maybe include an ENL block specifically that we are able to designate to meeting with our students in small group instruction, and also would be very beneficial to provide a block of time specifically for ENL teachers to collaborate with classroom teachers.
Okay, and I'm Kristen Aimi. I'm the ENL teacher up at Hillside. Thank you everyone for having us here. So I'm just going to touch briefly on the successes and drawbacks for the ENLs at Hillside.
Oh, Kristen, your connection is
great.
really bad.
I can't say enough about having all my students in the building full days. It is great. It allows me to
Okay.
Oh,
Kristen, your connection is really bad.
is anything better? Can you hear me?
It's still choppy.
No good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you, but it goes.
All
in and
right.
out.
Let me move
Yeah.
to a different spot and see if
Okay.
that worked.
Okay. And I also
Okay.
forgot Jeanette Coker, who's
All
also
right.
going to speak just a little bit about SEL. So go right ahead.
Okay. Maybe Melissa will just finish.
Sure, Kristen, I'm hearing you. It sounds like you want me to pick it up. So first of all, thank you to both of you.
Anything better with my connection?
No, you know what?
No?
Let Melissa do it because it's going to be in
All
and
right.
out, and you know, and it's.
Melissa, go.
Okay, so briefly, so at Hillside, the English language learners are able to attend school for the full day. The hybrid works well when they can come for the full day because they can more easily receive their mandated minutes. Some need a reteach of classroom content, which is good when children are attending both the AM and PM sessions. And the department has scheduled services for Ls in the PM session so that there's not duplication that's occurring even with instructional content. When students, as a drawback, when students are attending only the AM session or only the PM session rather than the full day, there are challenges to scheduling around mandated minutes. And some of this is a function of their color groups. Planning with non-departmental ENL colleagues is challenging. It only occurs during team meetings once a month. And while there are no longer Flex Wednesdays at Hillside, one positive is planning for instruction with ENL colleagues has been done creatively. I'd like to thank both of our presenters here for coming and giving of their time. So thank you both so much.
We'll move now to, I don't think we have Chadia, but we'll move on to before Drew, Jeanette. And if you would just do the shortest 5 minutes you can possibly do.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, board. I don't think I'll even be 5 minutes because pretty much everything that everyone has said, they have pretty much said it. So, just from an SEL standpoint, I have to say our kids are resilient. They are champions. They are powering through. There are some challenges. There are some successes across the board, as you've heard mentioned before. But essentially, we put out a survey at the beginning of before school during the 2-week remote learning. Most of the kids' fears came from academic fears and social fears and the little guys about, are they going to see their friends? Are they going to be able to do lunch? Are they going to be able to have resource? And, items like that.
As they moved into the hybrid model, they basically, some of their anxieties had already gone down because they were in it. They were so happy to be back at school. They're tired, they admit it. And that whole synchronous learning is sometimes challenging for them due to exactly everything that everyone else has said. But they are powering through, and they would like to continue to be in the hybrid model. Although some of them will choose to do remote. And I think it's kind of like, it's really a choice, and we will support them as best as we can from a school counseling and a human services perspective. I know Melissa spoke a lot about advisory. That a successful advisory program is time planning and training, and those are key elements there. And for students as well as the adults. So I think that's about as brief as I can get.
Awesome, Jeanette. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Drew, you have some competition now.
Yeah, that was really quick. I'm very impressed. I'll keep it. I just want to say hi. I'll keep this as brief as I can. I had a chance to collaborate with the entire physical education and health department, as well as the administrative team, to look at a variety of different options to best suit our needs and make it as safe as possible. And although that we agree that we would much rather have the students present in class, we understand it is not feasible due to the current state regulations created by the pandemic. Currently, during the hybrid format, we are able to meet the needs of our students by keeping them 12 by 12 feet apart for aerobic activity and health classes at 6 by 6. If we go all in, it would be unrealistic at this time. Even though it's tough to find a lot of positive during this, I've clearly witnessed the resiliency and creativity of my staff. They have had to think outside the box, learn new skills, and design a new curriculum and teach in a whole new way. I was planning on sharing a bunch of those highlights, but due to time, I just want to, show that the staff and the students are getting top-notch educational experience and learning and exciting new skills and activities that they can use for the rest of their lives. I'll save those for our school board presentation in November. Athletics are not affected by either model. The Hastings athletics fall season is going healthy and strong. We have set a bunch of COVID safety protocols this year to ensure the safety of everyone involved. You can find a lot of that stuff on the Hastings Athletic website. Although the season looks a lot different than years past, it is clearly evident from the enthusiasm, hard work, and excitement displayed by our coaches and players, and that everyone is thrilled to be back on the fields, courts, and courses, competing and representing our school. For all you fans out there and wish you were permitted to attend the events, we're currently looking into some live streaming options, so hopefully you can still safely watch and support your Hastings Yellow Jackets. On behalf of the students, athletes, and coaching staff and athletic department, I would like to thank the board, administration, grounds crew, and Hastings Booster Club for your unwavering continued help and support.
All right.
How's that?
That is awesome. You get some more minutes on November 4th. Thank you so much. And now
That works.
Maureen and Joe are going to actually they have some competition now with the standard you've set, Drew.
Hi. Yes, so I'm going to very briefly summarize Joe and I, the comments we put together. Obviously, what was mentioned tonight in terms of facilities, which we all know, we have a tremendous space challenge, and that really is the largest challenge in terms of speaking about working around the facilities. In terms of the successes, oh my goodness, my dog. In terms of the successes in the hybrid model, obviously the ability to move about hallways and with less density in the buildings really allowed for the cleaning of the building to happen between classes. Similarly, with the transportation, we've been able to correctly social distance with not only the hybrid, but also by the number of parents that opted out of transportation. So we've been able to successfully run those buses with very few students on there. In terms of impacts on bringing more people in, I think we know the challenges in terms of just the amount of getting desks back into some of these classrooms and the dividers, and a lot of what was mentioned tonight in terms of safety. That's our largest challenge that we face, I think, in terms of resources. Joe's team, of course, does an unbelievable job, and with additional people in the building would require some additions to the cleaning staff to make sure we're maintaining the level of cleanliness that we've been able to do during the hybrid model. And similarly for the cafeteria, again, the challenge about lunch spaces and places to eat as the weather gets colder, that'll be a little bit more difficult for us in bringing more students in at this point would make that more challenging. Joe, do you have anything?
I think that's
Besides
perfect. I had a lot, but I'll pass.
But again, this comes back to the facilities, so thank you.
And then we're now going to end the segment by asking our bargaining unit presidents to say a few words. And I'll start with the Civil Service Employees Association president and vice president of the clerical unit, both Nancy and Patrick. And thank you.
Right now, staff is stretched. We've been very adaptable to all the needs of all the buildings. Each building has its own individual needs. Also, that brings with all the new protocols, a level of anxiety that has been mentioned before by Lou, by Jennifer. So those things we're working through. Also, the protocols change, as we all know, and all staff is adhering. What I get a feeling from most of the staff, they do feel stretched, and that brings a level of anxiety, but they've been able to work through with all the support of the administrators. The administrators have been wonderful to the adaptability needed to keep moving forward. The only thing that I would say is the hybrid is definitely the model, because if you decide to bring in more children, that level of anxiety is going to go higher. And that was brought on just by the quarantine itself that happened recently at both schools. So, and both staffs were hit hard. In ending, I just want to say, as Maureen knows and as mentioned, she's bringing on more staff. That would help an enormous sense of bringing the stress down amongst the staff. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Patrick, for representing our monitors, teacher assistants, and teaching aides who have been tremendous, and you have as well. So thank you so much.
Excuse me, Valerie, could you check your microphone? It's a little difficult to hear you.
Better?
No.
Yeah, I think it goes down a little bit and then goes up. How about that? Is it a little better now?
It's still the same. We can hear you. It's just very muted.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So go right ahead.
That's better. That's better.
Thank you, Patrick, on behalf of the teacher assistants, monitors, and teacher aides who you represent in your unit, and for all of your great work that you've been doing since the spring, when that same group of people were involved in being part of the child care program. So thank you so much. And Nancy, representing the CSEA clerical unit.
I wanted to recognize the nurses who are doing an outstanding job. They're part of our union. I don't know how they do it every day. They're making hundreds of phone calls. They're seeing the kids who come in. They're calling parents and the Board of Health, and they're just amazing. And thank you for getting us extra help for them. That's been great. Just basically, the clerical workers, we're flexible and resilient, and we'll do whatever we have to ensure the well-being of the children. So whatever you decide, we're there working hard for you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. And again, for all of the clerical members that you represent, as well as the nurses, as you said, who've been just really incredible. Thank you. And finally, the Hastings Administrators Association representative or vice president would be Amy Cazes. Thank you. Amy? Amy.
I think it's very difficult to hear you, Valerie. Maybe you need to take off your headset.
Actually,
Amy, she asked you to speak.
Yeah, go ahead, Amy.
Thank you. I'm sorry I couldn't hear. So thank you, everybody. On behalf of the Administrative Association, I just want to give some brief comments. One of the things that it's important to know is that the administrators are hearing from everyone, from our families, from our teachers, and even from our students. And we have people that feel all different ways. We have families that are, hoping to see full days of school for childcare purposes, for greater direct instruction purposes. We have families that feel the hybrid model is just perfect. It's giving their kids consistency without putting them at risk of being in closer quarters. And then there's also families that still have very serious health concerns and have chosen the remote model. In the same way, our teachers have different feelings. Our kindergarten teachers, Our communications teachers, their class sizes are such that they could have an all-in and still maintain social distance, whereas our grades 1 through 4 teachers, that is not the case. We did reach out to both Bronxville and Chappaqua because I know that both districts are all in, and we wanted to find out what it was that they were doing to see if we could possibly do it. And I just want to very briefly share a couple of very important factors. Number one, both districts are maintaining 6 feet of social distance at all times. Both districts have split their classes when the classrooms cannot hold the number with 6 feet of social distance. Bronxville has hired substitutes and student teachers to supervise the classrooms, whereas Chappaqua has repurposed their special area teachers. 5 out of 6 days a week, special area teachers are monitoring cohorts, whereas the 6th day they're teaching special area to the entire grade at a time. So it's a very different model, but it is certainly something that they are still maintaining the 6 feet of social distance. The other piece that I think is important to note is that contractual obligations impact the ability to move all students in. And in other districts, the obligations are different than the obligations that we have in Hastings. And that plays into also the decisions that we can make in Hastings. Most importantly, I believe, is that when we consider an all-in model, we have to consider the implications. And there are staffing implications, there are certainly space implications, and then there are financial implications, the hiring of a lot of new staff members in order to make an all-in kind of model happen. Unanimously, our administrative association feels that moving to an all-in model is not possible right now if we are following the Department of Health guidelines. And for that reason, we are recommending that we do continue in the hybrid model at all 3 buildings. Thank you so much. We'd like to thank everybody for their support and involvement. Our teachers have done a tremendous job, our staff as well. And thank you to Dr. Henning-Piedmonte, Ms. Szymanski, and Ms. Caraballo, and the entire board. Thank you.
Yeah, this is probably one of the headsets that fell off of the truck. How about now? You heard that part.
It's better.
But not wonderful. It's
Not
actually
wonderful, but better.
Okay, it's at its highest level here, so I think
Okay.
it may have been overworked a little bit. Okay, thank you, everyone. All of the administrators and our teachers and our bargaining unit presidents and vice presidents for coming this evening and sharing your feedback. And we really appreciate, the time it took for you to gather this, because we know that you did speak to other faculty and staff members in your building. So thank you so much for your time and for making sure that you're doing everything that you can do to keep our students, faculty, and staff safe, while also making sure that we maintain high standards for student learning and continue to make sure that all students, as many students as possible, can not only be in the building, but that we keep our schools open.
Quick question, is that the representative from the teachers union, Valerie?
He was invited, so I don't see him on the call. So maybe there's a change in plan.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to verify.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you all for those very thorough responses to the questions that Valerie put forward to each of you building leaders and directors. And I think Valerie, if you can share with the board any type of recommendation that you have at this point, and board members, certainly if you have questions or comments after Valerie's comments, that will be the time. And I am sorry that it's now 7:22. I'm hopeful that the board members that are on this call can extend their participation past 7:30, so that and the staff members also, whoever can and is able, if you can remain on the call, so that we can have some questions answered or discussion around the summary and recommendations that Valerie might have.
Okay, thank you so much, Lauren. So, and I'll be very quick. There's nothing to repeat, and everyone heard the same themes across the various speakers, especially at our building levels. The governor's order, New York Forward, still stands, and we still are in phase 4. We have to maintain social distancing, and we are restricted in terms of increasing the number of students who can be in our schools on any given day, because we do not have additional space that we can use that we are not currently already using. Based on the two recent cases that were referenced tonight, it resulted in us having to shift from the hybrid model fairly quickly to the remote learning model, and it taught us about the impact that one case can have on how children and staff need to be quarantined, resulting in both cases with the need for us to go into the remote learning model. Back in August, there were 30 to 40 cases reported per day. Just this week, Westchester County reports that there's 70 new cases of a day of positive COVID test. Westchester County on October 17th saw its highest increase on Sunday, October the 11th since late May. On Monday, we learned from our county executive, George Latimer, who the superintendents have been meeting with since late spring, that COVID cases continue to rise. And it's the first time since, going back to June 6th, that Westchester County has over 1,000 cases, active cases. They're now at 1,033 cases. Over the course of just 2 weeks, the number has risen from 426 cases. And unfortunately, last week, 6 people died. And there are 58 people who are still hospitalized. The county, as a result of these data, decided to have half of its workforce return to working from home. And that starts actually on the coming Monday. The Westchester County Department of Health has been extremely taxed as a result of the increased need for contact tracing. We experienced that ourselves. Certainly in some of our districts in the region, they report that days pass before contact tracing even starts. We have, in our own experience, a contact tracer that learned later on that there were additional students impacted by one of the cases, that they didn't get a chance to return to the school to actually notify that administrator that had happened. And that is a theme occurring throughout the region, that there's just so many more cases that the contact tracers are, potentially, having to make some concessions that, unfortunately are to our disadvantage. As you heard, there's a delicate ecology in our schools. We don't have the same space as Bronxville, yet we're compared to Bronxville, endlessly. We're probably not likely to hire any additional teachers to split classes like Chappaqua, which again, we're compared to, quite a bit. If in fact we did split, we wouldn't even have the space, if we could afford the additional teachers to actually make that work for us. Based upon all of what you heard tonight and all of what I've seen as well, we need to remain in the hybrid model, and as it's been presented, for the safety of all of our district faculty, staff, and students. And that would be my recommendation for what occurs in the month of November.
Thank you, Valerie. Are there any board members who'd like an opportunity to ask a question or to share a comment? I see Jody.
Thanks, Lauren. I just wanted to, as I said in the chat, I'm going to have to leave pretty soon after 7:30 because I have another meeting scheduled. But, and I'm sorry that I won't be here, especially to hear other board members' questions and concerns, because they may not necessarily see things the way I do. But I want to thank everyone, because I know that you put an enormous amount of time into preparing these reports for us. We did have a chance to read everything ahead of time. And it matters. It really matters what you have to say. And I know at the same time, as board members, we get lots of letters from people in the community. We get lots of very compelling letters from people on all the different sides. There are many detailed and compelling letters promoting the all-in option, and often very convincing. But I have to say, in listening to, and it's very hard to weigh all of this and to think about what's best. But in listening to everyone, it seems to me pretty clear that we need to stay the course with hybrid for all the reasons that you stated. Particularly what stands out to me are safety and security, anxiety level. The psychologist in me has been saying this over and over in terms of what the heightened anxiety does to people, to parents, to kids, and our ability to do what we need to do. And for all the things that Valerie just read, none of which at least I had never heard, everything you read from the state in terms of comparing us to other schools that everybody compares us to, I just feel it's pretty clear to me that this is what we need to do now to continue to do the best that we can under terrible circumstances. And I just want to end with thanking everyone, teachers, staff, administrators, custodians, everybody. You've given your heart and your soul, and I know it's not easy. And not easy to have to come into school and be in the building and be anxious and nervous and worry about your own health and your family's health. So I really thank everybody deeply for that. I will stay for a few more minutes.
Thank you, Jody. Are there any other comments or questions from board members?
I had just one thing. I want to thank everyone. I know this is obviously all the things, right? It's just crazy. I mean, listening to the different schools, there's a lot of similarities, but there's differences. And I think it's really clear that we're in some ways trying to fit on one size fits all solutions to vastly different populations, vastly different populations of students, of parents. So we get a lot of notes about people wanting to go full time. I can tell you, none of them come from the high school, right? Zero. Maybe there's a few and I missed them, but none of them come to high school. But we get bombarded by younger families. I think, one of the things that's very obvious is by the time you're in high school, you're pretty facile with computers and you're pretty facile with a lot of different modalities of learning. And we can make a lot of cases about social emotional problems. We can make a lot of cases or challenges. I don't want to say problems, challenges. And, as Lou and Melissa pointed out, I mean, just seeing your friends, there's a lot of value to that. But the older kids get, the more they can kind of get by. Yeah, I'm sure we'll find out there's some damage that was done to all of us at some point 10 years down the road, but they can get by. But I think, when you look at our youngest learners, we're going to be in hybrid, it sounds like, for the month of November. But I think it's going to be a problem if we end up with kindergarten only, for example, being full-time for the entire school year and no one else at Hillside. So I think what I'd like to say is, and maybe parts of the middle school too, maybe at the high school, we figure out that we can do this hybrid for much longer and it works. But what I want to throw out there is that we all continue to keep in mind that we've got to find creative ways to get our youngest learners, especially K to 2. Developmentally, 5 through 7-year-olds are pretty similar developmentally, and they do not have an ability to honestly do much of anything on the computer at all, and they really lose out. So what I want to make sure happens is that we are we're trying to solve two different challenges here, right? Keeping everyone safe and giving children opportunity to develop and learn. And those feel like they're in, constant tension with each other. But I want to make sure that, look, I'm just going to throw a fear out there that, that that we can get into this fear-based mentality, which can keep us from finding creative solutions. And I'm not pointing at anyone, and I'm not saying that that's what's happening. I'm just saying, having been in organizations my whole life, I know how groupthink can start to happen. And what I want to make sure happens is we're constantly staying creative, especially with those youngest learners. And if that means you have to come back to the board and say, there's something that's going to cost us $100,000, we can say, man, that's a lot of money. We can't make it happen. Maybe we can make it happen. Maybe there's a way to find some space. Maybe there's a way to put a tent. Maybe, and I don't know what those answers are, but I just want to say that I want to help find those creative solutions where we can, because I know that it's really, really challenging and not working for, again, those K-2 specifically learners. And, we hear it all the time. And so whatever we can do as a board to support you, let's keep this conversation open. Let's keep finding creative solutions for it, because I know that everyone feels jammed in somehow, but there's always an opportunity to find a way for things to work when we think creatively. Might not be in the next month, but as we move forward, what can we do? So thanks everyone for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Doug. Allison or Jeremy, did you have any thoughts or questions you wanted to share?
I'll go after Allison if Allison wants to take first.
I wanted to echo the thanks that people have already given, and clearly the amount of time that all of you and all of the teachers are putting in. I do think we've gotten feedback about how different the schooling feels, and that's really reflective of the hard work that the teachers have put in to make class feel more compelling, even if you're at home. So I'm very appreciative of that, as are many others. The one thing that came to my mind hearing Melissa talk about Flex Wednesdays, I can feel the tension there, that there are some very good things that were happening with that time, and yet the desire for more in-person learning. I did see that some other districts are rotating, every few weeks, having a 9:30 start or a 10 start to maintain some of that professional learning time. I don't know if that's something that, would hit people the wrong way, because again, it's taking away time from instructional hours. But I did see that some other districts were starting to do that as a way to keep it in the schedule. So that's one thing that came to mind. Yeah.
Thank you, Allison. Jeremy, did you want to share?
Perfect. Yes, thank you, Lauren. I'm actually going to speak mostly to the three principals, and that is because the presentations were fabulous. I love that we have prioritized special ed and our English language learners by getting them in the building 4 times, and I don't see any real pathway to improve on that. What I would like our principals, and I'm sorry, and I include the other presentations, the staff is crushing it and doing a lot. I would like to focus on what I heard a lot from Lou and Jennifer right off the bat, and I like the directness of it. Jennifer, I mean, there is no support for all-in model. That couldn't be clearer. I love that Lou repeated that. So let's just focus on hybrid. How do we improve hybrid? So Amy, if I could start with you. Amy, the kindergarten classrooms that are all in, did we split the classrooms, or are those all kids in their original 1 classrooms?
They are in their original classrooms. What happened was we split into a 6th section, but our enrollment went down significantly. So our class sizes range from 15 to 17.
Perfect. Thank you, Amy. Is it fair to assume that we are sitting closer than 6 feet together in kindergarten because we are using the personal barriers to allow that setup? I know we have the hexagon desks in there.
So in kindergarten, because the classroom sizes are larger, we're able to maintain the social distance because of the low numbers.
So do we have only 2 kids at every hexagon desk, or did we remove the hexagon desks and go to regular desks?
We have rectangular tables in the classrooms, rectangular tables.
Okay. So I would like us, I mean, for Hillside to focus on getting K-2. Why are we stopping at kindergarten? Why don't we use the barriers and go under 6 feet? I think it's possible. I mean, Jennifer said it very clearly. It is 6 feet apart or less than 6 feet with barriers. So I would like us to really start considering K1 and 2 all in with the use of our clear barriers, not the 3-sided ones that are obviously have some problems, you know, but if that's, I mean, we can build a barrier right across those rectangular desks. I think we can borrow the desks from other grade levels. I really think we're missing on that one. And the AM/PM model is a huge success. My own children are in 3rd grade. I think that age group, they walk home alone. They're doing great. They can get online. I think we need to focus on improving hybrid. We are never going all in. It's just not coming. I'd like to shift maybe towards either Jennifer or Lou. I don't see how we're improving hybrid enough. I love adding lockers. I wrote to the board, I want us to go towards 2 days in out of every 3 days. And to do that, we would stay in hybrid, but we would add more students. It's what I heard from both principals. We want to bring in more students. We want them to have all in person. So Lou, are our classes completely full, even with the barriers? If we built different barriers, could we get up to about 18 students in a classroom, and not with 6 feet spacing? But when we put up a barrier, I assume desks can get sliding right next to each other in certain locations.
I'm going to answer both questions. One, the question about the classrooms is we do have some classrooms that do have 17 or 18 students in them now, and we have the movable, the plexiglass polycarbonate barriers dividing the desks. So we do have 17 and 18. The majority of our rooms are probably hovering around 14 or 15, but we do have some of the smallest in square footage terms, some of the smallest classrooms in the district. So that is a concern. Our biggest class is, I think, 18 at this point, and that classroom is pretty tight when you put the barriers up. That's to your first question. The second question, you know, with the recommendation of getting, maybe possibly removing Flex Wednesday, that would put us on a rotation of putting students in the building, you know, on alternate weeks, 3 days a week and 2 days a week, alternating weeks. So that would give us both the middle school and high school more students in the building, quite frankly, an extra day every 2 weeks.
Thank you,
To
Lou.
add on to that, we already at the middle school have many classes that are already at 18, and that is in the hybrid model. We actually have some classes that have 24, 23 students in them already at 600, square feet in the classroom, and then with the student barriers. And that's really because of our ICT and our co-taught classes already.
Perfect. Thank you, Jennifer. I'll get onto that. And Lou, yeah, thank you for reminding me about Flex Wednesday. I do think that brings us from 2 days a week to 2.5 days a week. And Melissa, I would definitely support the recommendation you put there, but it only gets us to 2.5 days a week if we completely skip out on professional development this year. It can't go that we add in Flex Wednesday and then start doing a 2-hour late start. Then we really haven't gotten to 2.5 days. We've lost a lot of that Wednesday. If we are going to prioritize students in the building, and I am a teacher, I've repeated that a lot. I'm a middle school teacher, but I would take the parents' point of view on that poll. 600 parents responded, and they are responding poorly to Flex Wednesday. I would I like that recommendation. Lou, you are correct. That gets us from 2 days a week up to some weeks with 3 days a week. But I hope we can support that, getting rid of professional development and taking that whole day for teaching. So Jennifer, we have some classes that can get 24 people or 24 students in those classrooms.
People.
And that's like 4 teachers and 20 students probably for an ICT class?
And there's extensive amount of barriers. With the photos that I shared, the problem is too with safety and tripping on those barriers. We've already had some students and staff members trip on them, so that adds to the congestion of the room.
Okay, thank you. So I would really like us then to spend our time, it's October. It looks really clear, all in is not happening. The presentations were right on. The teachers, we're not trying to add stress to teachers and lose them. But I think every month moving forward, we have to work towards getting hybrid to be closer to what we want it to be. And that is more school time. The method that I wrote about to our board members was not 2 cohorts, but 3 cohorts. And I would like maybe not start it in high school. Those kids are both, one, more likely to be carrying a large dose of virus for our teachers. So maybe we would actually try, if that's for the administrators to consider, let's put it all on Jennifer. I'm sorry. The Hillside has AM, PM. Let's see if Amy has interest in getting K through 2. But if we give Lou a pass here, I mean, can we get to 2 out of 3 days for every student, not 2.5 out of 5? It would be a 3-person cohort. It would be green, gold, and silver. And you would take 2 of the groups in at a time. It would be about 60% of the kids in, since we have so many opting out and 1 cohort would stay out. It seems that we can build barriers to get us to about 18, 20 desks, even in a small room. And I'd really like us to take every month moving forward, not to stress it all about all in. Our classrooms can't handle it. But the parents are saying 2 days a week is not enough of the good stuff of hybrid. And the good stuff for us has to be getting more students in. I think T-shaped barriers tight to the desks, they don't have to be tripping. There's so many ways to get these desks at 4.5 feet apart with the barriers that I saw the facilities guys building. And moving forward, obviously, Valerie, we are all supporting staying in hybrid. Thank you for the work session. I would just like our focus moving forward to always be improving hybrid. And that means getting more student days per week, not stopping at 2.5. I think we can get to 3 days a week and 1 cohort even getting 4 days a week every week with a green, gold, silver, or what's simpler for parents, just an ABC, and bringing in 2 cohorts at a time. If anybody's interested in that, I hope you reach out. I would love to try to see what our big obstacles are moving forward. Thank you very much, Lauren. Thank you, Valerie. And thank you to all the presentations.
Thank you, Jeremy. I just am really impressed by the amount of attention that each of the presenters brought and how they gathered the information from all of the stakeholders in their building, used data to help them make decisions. I think there was a lot of discussion around anxiety and feelings, but it's really the data that is pushing for the decisions for the hybrid model, whether it's the square footage of a room, whether it's the number of students, that those pieces of data are immovable. And so while we did speak about feelings and the notion of anxiety and fear that remains throughout the community, whether that's from students or teachers or parents, which we continue to embrace and live with this level of anxiety and learn how to cope with it, which I think is a good learning tool in of itself. But that it really is the data that's providing us the information that makes the hybrid model make the most sense for the district presently. I do support, Valerie, the recommendation to remain in a hybrid for the month of November. And it sounds as if the other board members attending this evening have also shared that idea. But I do want to echo what Doug has said about our earliest learners in the district. And this idea that moving past November, thinking forward into the year, if statistics of the viral spread remain the same or go down again, what can we do? What possibilities are there to move the 88 first graders back into a full day? And I know, and then perhaps the 127 second graders. I haven't spoken up about this population much because I know the constraints that we're all under, and I'm pragmatic and I want to think safely. But at this point in the year, I have to say that those students can't fill out a survey. They're not going to advocate for themselves. The parents are advocating for them, and they're doing so loudly and with good purpose. I've previously been a kindergarten and a first grade teacher, and I do know the challenges of students and in a face-to-face classroom in that age range, let alone managing part of the day at home. I would hope that we can continue the conversation, or that the Hillside Committee can continue to think about what can be done, and to think in really big ways, like Doug said, to see if there are opportunities for the community to support whatever big ideas might be out there, and to see when that feasibility could happen. And I understand that it's not happening in November, and I think that makes sense because we're not prepared to do something as bold as that in November. But I do think that there's something, all of our children are maturing, but we need to do as a schooling system, we need to make sure that they're developing. And that's really our role here of how to intervene the maturation to make it flourishing development. And I think that our educators at K through 12 are doing that. But to no fault of their own, whatever they're providing our youngest learners just cannot equate to what would happen if they were given the opportunity to be more involved in face-to-face instruction. So on the other side, on the flip side, I do have to say that I think that this pandemic has given us opportunity as a community to make an even deeper and more meaningful school and home connection. I think, all the research shows for decades that positive and involved school and home connection it benefits children, it benefits their success in school, it benefits them socially. And so I think that even through all these struggles and these connections that may feel fraught, they're ones that will benefit kids over time because they are having an even more ingrained opportunity to have school and home be connected. I think that's a flip side that I think about, that I hope we see in future, evidence of the kids that are growing up in this age of COVID. So I don't know if there are any other comments you'd like to make, Valerie. I want to thank everyone for extending up to nearly 8 o'clock past our time. But Valerie, are there any further thoughts that you'd like to share?
No, I just want to reiterate my thanks and gratitude to all of the administrators and our educators who were here, and our union leadership and obviously the Board of Education for prioritizing this discussion and having a board work session so that you can, adequately and thoroughly hear all of the positions and appreciate the complexities of what the buildings have to do, because if that's pretty clear, and that there isn't a stone unturned, and a conversation that isn't had many times by this collection of leaders with their faculty and staffs. And so I hope that there is a tolerance for really seeing the depth of the complexity of this matter, and the potential for there to be other cases. And we had we always have near cases, as Jennifer said. We have those, and we are grateful that those don't emerge to be a situation where we have to engage in contact tracing. But we are very concerned about having to see that sort of grow as we are we enter into the more inclement weather and the influenza, seasonal allergies, and common cold season. So that, which is only further going to complicate some of our decision making. So, but I appreciate, as I said, the board giving us this audience to share all of their, as I said, thoughts and feedback from their own stakeholders. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Good night.
Good night.